What are practical solutions to homelessness? I worked at a non-profit that was basically an Amazon fulfillment, boxing and shipping warehouse. Every employee was either homeless, in recovery, recently out of prison, or some combination. We had full-time counselors that focused on housing first, mental health later, and then job placement before they graduated. We also had financial volunteers come in to sort people's debts and taxes. If anyone was interested, capable and safe. We had a sewing shop, a wood shop, and a machine shop for learning more advanced skills than fulfillment. I taught carpentry in the wood shop. It was pretty successful. We even made about 85% of our budget from work and selling our products. The rest came from fundraising and whatever state and federal grants we could get. I would say it wasn't perfect. A lot dropped out, relapsed, or just went back to their habits. It was kinda depressing. But the ones that made it had a home, a financial plan, a job lined up, and mental health services scheduled. If we could something like that at a larger scale, which would be a hell of a nightmare to figure out, I think it would be the best option. A holistic approach gets people a blank slate and a fresh start with a paycheck and a roof, without forcing them to give up their own agency and freedom. Housing first is the only solution proven to work, and would actually work out cheaper than most of the band-aid solutions. A lot of the arguments against it focus on mental health and drug addiction, but those cannot be solved if a person doesn't have a stable living situation. You need supportive housing. You also need to consider different types of people experiencing homelessness. A single mother living with her kids in a car, showering at the gym, and still going to work would need just a place to live. A veteran with PTSD would need a place to live plus mental health care, supportive housing. Someone with developmental disabilities would likely need long-term residential care. Then you get those who have aged out of the foster care system, who weren't lucky enough to find a long-term living situation, who need support for a few years while they get their lives together. You also have those who have recently been paroled, who just need something while they find a job, and a long-term plan. The one thing all those have in common is the need for housing first. People focus on those who are visible, those who have mental health issues or drug problems, the more violent or crazy types, but don't notice the number flying below the radar who are currently unhoused but otherwise live a regular life with work, school, etc. I read recently as many as 40% of Americans are a few paychecks away from homelessness, which is horrifying. Some kind of regulation as to corporations buying property would be good too. Years ago I worked at a day center for the homeless, and I'd guess about 80% of the people that used it had zero interest in re-entering the normal world. It was just too much for them. The rules in their world were much easier to navigate. Some folks only know how to function in survival mode. I always thought dead malls could be organized rather quickly with appropriate sections for sleeping quarters and outreach areas for specific needs. Security would be important, and step-up programs available for those wanting it. Ample day services available for those in need who don't want to get off the streets. 2. We could go back to how it was before asylums were closed down. There are hardly any left anymore. And there's a result. They are so overcrowded, they just don't take in people who need to be there. In 1970, there was an open spot in an asylum for 1 in every 300 Americans. Now it's closer to 1 in every 10,000. 1 in every 300 having so many mental issues they can't function in society sounds about right to me. I don't think the rates of mental illness have really changed all that much. 1 in 10,000? There's no way they're able to help everyone who needs it. Granted, the asylums were shut down for some pretty compelling reasons. They were rife with mismanagement and abuse. There was straight-up torture going on in some of them. And no one ever got in trouble because who are you going to believe? The schizo locked up at the funny farm? Or the doctor trying to treat them? The power dynamics were definitely out of whack and were definitely abused. But that doesn't mean the goal of what the asylums were for was bad. A little bit of oversight would have probably gone a long way to make asylums a viable option. Anyway, I say it's a practical solution because it's one we used to have. Better access to mental health facilities and professionals. Better mental health treatments besides only SSRIs. Subsidized assisted living facilities. I worked for years in specialized shelters for men who were chronically homeless and had serious and persistent mental illness. Men who previously would or have been institutionalized. But we had the resources to work closely with them and keep them integrated meaningfully in the community. Only up to 40 men at a time though. And there are so many people who need extensive support that is just not available. I work in an ER now. And see how we end up holding people who need mental health treatment for days, if not weeks, because there are no treatment beds including children. It's inhumane. And something has to change. There aren't enough beds. Not enough staff. And mental, behavioral health staff get paid the same as a fast food worker. I switched to being a nursing assistant and I make more now than when I was running 2 24/7 programs. Why would anyone subject themselves to an emotionally exhausting field that is so clearly under-prioritized?